Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome to the Bayat Ghadeer channel. This is your host, Sayyid Hassan Bukhari. We're doing a series on Nawasib, their history, and we're providing an analysis of them. Now, one of the issues that has come up, which we will all inshallah discuss the panel today, is the fact that some of their advocates, this modern advocates, insist that the Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah were at the forefront of fighting Nawasib and countering Nawasib propaganda. As can be evidenced in their texts. So we will, inshallah ta'ala, address this very issue. Is there anything accurate in what they're suggesting, or is it all just a facade, when in reality Nawasib were able to operate without any impunity, and in fact there was no real challenge to the way in which they behaved and what they wrote? That's our, inshallah, objective in today's show. So I think let's just kick off.
So the famous Ibn Qutayba, what does he say? He says, and many of the scholars of Hadith avoid to narrate his traditions, meaning Imam Ali alayhi salam's merits, or to reveal about him what needs to be revealed. And all those narrations have correct meanings. And they have deemed his son Al-Hussein alayhi salam a Khariji. Okay, and this is another point, because they say, oh, well, this hatred or this, nasb that they had, it was only towards Imam Ali alayhi salam. It wasn't towards his offspring. This is something exaggerated by the Shias. But here you can see quite clearly, Ibn Qutayba is actually admitting, and many scholars of Hadith, he's not talking about Shia scholars here, he's talking about scholars within Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, who had this position, and that they used to avoid narrating traditional Imam Ali alayhi salam's merits. Okay, and to the point that they even used to accuse Imam Hussein alayhi salam of being a Khariji. And look, it continues, and it says, who wanted to divide the unity of the Muslims, whose blood is permissible to be spilt based on the hadith of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him and his family. So they actually justify it using the prophetic Sunnah to legitimize his death and to have this position that he was a Khariji. And what do they bring? They bring this hadith: whoever revolts against my ummah while they are gathered, meaning gathered under a leader, a single leader, meaning Yazid, of course, at the time, kill him, whoever he is. And they equal his superiority to the people of the Shura, because if Umar considered him superior to them, he would have put him ahead of them, and he would not have made him a Khalifa, made him a part of the council, the Shura. And they have neglected those who mention him, Imam Ali alayhi salam, or have narrated narrations about his merits, to the extent that many of the scholars of Hadith would avoid to narrate avoid narrating them, but they are happy to collect narrations about the merits of Amr ibn As and Muawiyah. It is as if they do not actually care about these two, but they aim it to him, meaning Imam Ali alayhi salam. So if a person says Ali is the brother of the Messenger of Allah and the father of his two grandsons, Al-Hassan al-Hussein, and the people of the cloak are Ali, Fatima, Al-Hassan al-Hussein, the colors of their faces change, and the eyes dislike, and the hidden hatred in the hearts reveals itself. And if a person mentions the narration of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, whoever I'm Mawla, then Ali is his Mawla, and your position is to me is like Harun was to Musa. And the narrations like this, they try to find meanings for these narrations to belittle him, meaning Imam Ali alayhi salam, and downgrade his position, and due to the hate towards the Rafida, and turn against him because of them, i.e. the Shia. And this is exactly ignorance. This is such a big statement made by Ibn Qutayba, to be honest with you. There's so many things that can just be concluded from this statement alone. So, Sayyid Asbari, did you want to mention anything about this?
It kind of hits the nail on the head. He himself is exposing the fact that there existed individuals that if you were to narrate the merits of the people of the cloak, it would change they would exhibit signs of anger, which is precisely what the issue is for us. If in this day and age you have individuals that might feign that they love Ahlulbayt alayhi salatu wasalam, when you start praising their merits, you get these same individuals desperately trying to downplay that merit, try to offer some sort of tawil or offer some sort of way to weaken that narration. It's got nothing to do with any sincerity. It's all to do with try to downplay the merits of the people of the cloak, alayhi salatu wasalam. So that's the reality. And it's interesting that this very scholar from the Yala Sunnah camp is exposing that fact, highlighting that. And you can look at those attributes in this day and age as well. Sayyid Ali, do you want to add anything else? Or if not, I will then bring it to
No,
Brother Zadi to comment on.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, just that one reference alone is so strong and so powerful that so many things can be concluded from that. So many things. It just goes to show you that, you know, they had such extreme paranoia when it comes to the Shia, that on one aspect they were stuck, because if they narrated the traditions of the Imam Ali Islam, they feared that people may, you know, turn Shia because of the merits of Imam Ali Islam. At the same time, they had this animosity against Imam Ali Islam to the extent that their faces used to change. And this is the same problem we face now. Sometimes in certain centers, you know, you go and mention the virtues of Imam Ali Islam, you know, what's the first thing you're going to get accused of? You're going to get accused of being a Shia. Time to time again, certain speakers, they'll come, they'll take the pulpits, they'll start speaking about the members of the Ahlulbayt Islam, and straight away, oh, this guy must be inclined towards Shiism, or he's a Shia. And this is the reason why Imams of Sunnah wal Jama'ah as well, they used to get accused of being a Rafzi, simply because they used to have this certain attitude, or you could say love towards Ahlulbayt Islam. But even though on one hand, we have this element where we don't deny the fact that within Sunnah wal Jama'ah, there are some sincere people out there who do genuinely love the Ahlulbayt Islam. Of course, we say that loving the Ahlulbayt Islam is not just simply, you know, saying that you love them, but rather it's also submitting to their commands as well. We believe that it's necessary to also to follow them. So it's not just mere lip service. But yes, you know, the fact of the matter is, you had people within their school who had this such a strong opposition towards the, you know, Imam Ali Islam, the Prophet's household, even to the point of accusing the Prophet's grandson, Imam Hussein Islam, the master of the youth of paradise. You know, he was also part of Al-Qasar. He's a member of the, he was a member of those who entered the cloak under the Prophet, who the Prophet said that, you know, these are my family members. And you have people saying that he was a Khariji. So yeah, I mean, say, Zedi, did you want to mention anything here?
Yeah, just to continue on this point now, till now, right? There's a famous speaker or a YouTuber in Pakistan, right? So he gives a really funny example, but that example is actually really true, right? So he says, he's a Sunni, by the way, right? And he has some videos against Shias too, obviously. So he said that if I write the Sahih Hadith about Amir al-Mu'mineen or about Ahlul Bayt and put it on the gate of a masjid, of a Sunni masjid, then the people will come in and will be like, who is this Rafidi that has written it? This is weak, and this is this, and this is that. And if I put a fabricated hadith in praise of Abu Bakr and Umar or any other caliph on the gate of masjid, so they wouldn't question the authenticity of it. They'll be like, mashallah, it's such a beautiful hadith, etc., right? So why are these two double standards, right? And I mean, it's really obvious. Who are the scholars that are being accused of tashayyu? It's Nisai, who has written a book on the merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam. It's Hakim Nishapuri, who has mentioned few extra merit in his book Mustadrak al-Sahihayn. And likewise, Abdul Razak bin Hammam, because he used to quote hadith in the Fadail of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Likewise, even A'mash, Sulaiman bin Mehran al-A'mash, is also being accused of tashayyu, right? We're not going into the authenticity of it, whether it's been true or not, right? But you see, if anyone who quotes hadith Fadail of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, he's turned a Shia, right? We have so many examples. We have Sharik bin Abdullah Nakha'i, likewise, even Abu Hanifa to some extent because of his support for Zayd ibn Ali, was also accused of some sort of tashayyu, right? And we know like how he was against the Imams of Ahlul Bayt too, right? So you guys are completely right, and the example that you give from Ibn Qutayba is obviously an eye-opener too. Jazakallah.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Sayyid Zedi. But I mean, this reference, I honestly request the viewers to go back, pause the screen, have a good, thorough read, and contemplate on each sentence that Ibn Qutayba has presented. And this is from his book, Al-Ikhtilaf al-Lafz wal-Rad al-Jahmiya wal-Mushabiha, page number 54 to 56. Now we will come to another scholar from Sunnah wal Jama'ah who's making another admission. And Imam Hakim, he says, then our time has brought us to the rulers, that people seek nearness to them through hatred toward the family of the Messenger of Allah, may peace and blessings be upon him, and to downgrade them. So everyone who seeks intercession towards them, meaning the rulers, their intercession is by mentioning things about the family of the Prophet, and peace and blessings be upon him, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has purified them out of, and also by denying every merit that's mentioned from among the merits. And Allah is the helper for this. And we ask him to send the blessings upon Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, and his family, and that he substitutes them for us with the Kharijis, who are better than them, for he is the guardian and capable of it. And from among the reasons that made me to write this book, so he's written this book, and he explains why, is that I was present at a gathering where the heads of the scholars of jurisprudence, jurists and officials and others were present, and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was mentioned. So a big scholar of jurisprudence quickly said, Ali had not memorized the Quran. And this is al-Shahabi, who has mentioned this explicitly. Wow. So I said something like, really, the companions who are far more knowledgeable than al-Shahabi about this have testified about his memorization of the Quran. And this is Abdullah ibn Habib al-Sulaimi, the head of the reciters and from the Tabi'een, has learned it from him. And he has a dedicated recitation through him. And he's one of the narrators of Al-Asim Bahdala. And he continues, Imam Hakim has mentioned that within Sunnah wal Jama'ah, some of the leading scholars, went as far as even discrediting the fact that Imam Ali Islam had memorized the Quran. And then you can see Al-Hakim actually, he opposed that strongly, which is one of the reasons why he's written this book. So he said, no, look, that the Quran that we have, it actually comes from this, it's been narrated through Abu Abdullah Rahman al-Sulaimi, okay? And he is the head from among the Tabi'een. And if I remember correctly, interestingly, this individual was a Kharijite as well. If I remember correctly, he was a Kharijite. But the fact of the matter is that we have the Quran transmitted from Imam Ali Islam. Yet we have this leading scholar of Sunnah wal Jama'ah who's saying that, look, Imam Ali Islam didn't even have no knowledge of the Quran. So this is the point that within Sunnah wal Jama'ah, some of the leading figures, they really suffered from indigestion when it comes to the fazail and the virtues of the Ahlulbayt. This is from Fadail Fatima Zahra, page number 30 and 31. This is the reason why Al-Hakim actually wrote this book, because it was a refutation to many of the lies and belittling that was going on at the time from Sunni ulama. Of course, this was not from the Shias. Shias weren't doing anything like this. This is why Sunni ulama had to come forward to write these books to deal with the Nasbiism within themselves. And interesting, okay, so we know earlier we mentioned Ibn Qutayba and how there was a lot of self-censorship when he used to come to the hadith of the Ahlulbayt al-Islam. Some of them never even used to like narrating them because they feared that people would become Shia. This is a prime example, and this is from the Sunnah, volume 2, 346, 348. This is from Abu Bakr al-Khalal, and he narrates a tradition on the authority on the authority of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, that said, whoever I master, then Ali is his master. What does it mean? He said, don't talk about this. Leave this narration alone. And this hadith is Sahih, another tradition. And this is from, again, by Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who said that the Prophet, he's narrated that the Prophet as saying that whoever I master, Ali is his master. And what does it mean? So somebody asked him a question, that what is the meaning of the tradition? And he said, don't talk about it. Don't talk about this. Leave this narration as it came. This hadith is Sahih. Another tradition, and it says, you are to me as Harun was to Musa. What's the interpretation? He said, be quiet about this. Don't ask about this. Report as it came. And this hadith is Hasan, reliable. Okay, so previously we mentioned how there was this issue where when it used to come to the fazail of the Ahlulbayt al-Islam, within Sunni scholars themselves, they had major issues with this. And, literally their gatherings were just used as a purpose to really mock the Ahlulbayt al-Islam. So just like today, how we have gatherings commemorating, the martyrdom of Imam Islam and the martyrs of Karbala, we use such gatherings to remember the Ahlulbayt Islam, to talk about the prophets, talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and serve as a reminder of how we should be loyal lovers and supporters of the Ahlulbayt Islam, essentially in this world, which will give us close proximity with them in the afterlife. These type of gatherings is what we have. Now, unfortunately, within Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they used to have the opposite type of gatherings, where they used to literally sit there and they used to belittle the Ahlulbayt Islam, they used to mock them, they used to misquote traditions of the Ahlulbayt Islam. So where the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, explicitly mentioned something in Sahih Hadith in virtue of the Ahlulbayt, these guys used to mock it and they used to take a different meaning of it. Okay, like for example, "Oh Ali, you are to me like how Harun was to Musa alayhi salam." So they used to say instead maybe, "Oh Ali, you're to me like how Qarun was to Musa." And as we know, Qarun was an enemy of Musa alayhi salam. So, these are the type of games these people used to play when he's come to the hadith of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, in a way to belittle the Ahlul Bayt. And we know the famous hadith, "Anyone who intentionally lies upon me has reserved himself a seat in hellfire." So, these people had no shame. So that's one aspect, that they used to forge lies in traditions of the, in the name of the Prophet against the Ahlul Bayt. But at the same time, they used to have issues even narrating the hadith. And this is the reason why they had to conceal these traditions. I mean, as you can see, I'm not going to read all these traditions out, but the traditions are there for you to see. Have a look. You can see certain hadith being narrated and somebody saying, "Don't talk about this, leave this narration as it comes," or "Don't talk about this, leave this narration as it came," or, "Be quiet about this, don't ask about this report as it's, accept it how it is." So you can see that these people had some serious issues when it used to come to the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt Islam. And this is something very transparent. Okay, so the next one we come into is Kitab al-Ilal wal-Marifatu al-Rijal, volume 3, page number 354, number 5569. And it's a lengthy tradition from Abi Layl, from Imam Ali alayhi Islam. He's saying that, look, he narrated things that if I narrate them to you, you will start dancing. But by Allah, I will never narrate them to you. And also narrate from Mahmud, and he said something like, "You will become a Rafsi."
Yeah, I mean, this sums everything up, and it's this Razi phobia, which amazes me, even in that time. So even if a tradition is authentic, and it's in praise of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, there's this kind of fear amongst hadith transmitters of that time, recorders of that time, that if it's propagated to the wider populace, there's a danger that people might become a Rafid on account of it. So rather than use those narrations to propagate the merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the better approach was taken, as these individuals saw it, was to censor those narrations and hide them from the public. Now, if you've got nothing to worry about, why are you trying to hide it? Why were these narrations so significant that they could be in some way, conquer the heart of an individual and turn them into a Razi? There must have been something there. And such was the fear that a merit of Amir al-Mu'mineen would take someone to a deviant side, that there was almost like a necessity to hide it. So this kind of tells you that, once you get to the approach of hiding things or burning things or, making sure that the wider public doesn't know it's hidden, you automatically, that raises questions about the intentions of individuals. You know as well as I do, in this day and age, when you have governments which seek to cover up facts from a wider population, there's always some reason, some hidden motive. And obviously people resent that. But there's a fear that if it comes out, reality dawns on people, and that could create people's attitudes might change towards the government. And it's the same sort of approach with these individuals are taking. That you had a status quo where, for example, you might have had a sort of concept which people had been ingrained in people over decades. And all of a sudden a tradition comes up which may automatically raise eyebrows and raise questions amongst ordinary people. Hang on a minute, that's a major merit of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Let's think about it, let's talk about it. That would be enough to raise questions, raise doubts, make people challenge the status quo, which in turn their fear was, which could turn people towards Shiism. I mean, and also the important thing is they sought to counter it rather than talk about the status and the excellencies of Ahlulbayt alayhi salatu wasalam, they would convene gatherings in which these holy personalities were mocked, where their merits, if they, whatever they had, their excellencies, they were not propagated. Rather, to the contrary, they were weakened, or opportunity was taken to try to attack these individuals. So so we had a two-pronged approach. If you had a narration which was authentic and it praised the Ahlulbayt alayhi salatu wasalam, the approach was, let's try and hide it from the wider population. And the other way was, let's try and downplay the merits of these holy personalities by having gatherings in which they are mocked, in which people, to try and conquer people, way of thinking, not almost conquer, sorry, almost create that, maintain that status quo, that they are nothing compared to the school of caliphate which had been established by that time. So that is a very, very worrying development, but that's how the school of thought has developed over time. Let's ask Brother Zadi to expand on that point.
Let's go through the hadith first about the emphasis that even Ahl Sunnah have quoted the hadith that is emphasizing on the love of Ahlul Bayt. So the first hadith that I'm quoting is from Sunan at-Tirmidhi, and this is from volume number 6 and published by Muassasatul Risala and page number 335. And the hadith is termed as Sahih li ghayrihi, like something which is quoted through another authentic chain. And then Shu'ayb al-Nabud also quotes Allama Sindi in footnote. Right, so how does the hadith go? The famous hadith of Thaqalain, it says that I saw the Prophet, Jabir bin Abdullah is saying, I saw the Prophet during the pilgrimage as was on his camel speaking. So I heard him say, I left you that you must abide by, that you will never go astray, the book of Allah and my Ahlul Bayt. After quoting that hadith, Shu'ayb al-Nabud mentions the explanation of Allama Sindi. Allama Sindi says, my Ahlul Bayt, right? It was as if the Prophet made them equal in importance to his position, just as in his life. It was him and the Quran after his death. It was his family and the Quran. But it means that we must abide by their love and position, not abiding to their orders and actions. So see that even Allama Sindi, after mentioning this, it's emphasizing on the love part, right? We don't want to go into the second part that he said that we shouldn't abide by the orders and the actions that they say. It's a discussion for a separate day. But even then, like whatever the explanation he has given, at least it proves the point that we need to love them. Like that's I would say, the basic level of iman that every Muslim should have. But how do we see in the examples that you have seen, what does Hakim Nishapuri is mentioning about about like the scholars of the hadith? How were they belittling Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wassalam by saying he didn't know the Quran? And they were quoting Sha'bi, right? So it's not Sha'bi wasn't a small figure. Sha'bi was Tabi'i, was someone who has seen the companions, right? So the second generation of the Prophet, like Sha'bi, was alive during the time of Amir al-Mu'minin too. But he never narrated any hadith from Amir al-Mu'minin, but he was alive at that time. But you see, he criticized Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam from that time. And that level of nasab or the nawasism just went from generation after generation, right? So we ask our brothers, right, from the other school of thought, do you really love Ahlul Bayt?
So now I'll present a hadith which is from um, Abu Dawood, Musnad Abi Dawood, volume 4, page 239 240. That Abu Huraira says that Prophet said about Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, whoever loves me should love them. Yani, both Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. The researcher of this hadith has termed the hadith as authentic. So you can see like how Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein are being respected and the Ummah is being told to love them. And we will see how Imam Hussein was described by Sunni scholarship when he rose up against Yazid. The second hadith that I want to quote is from Ahmad bin Hanbal. The next hadith I would rather say is from Kitab Fadail al-Sahaba, page 574-575, hadith 982. It says that Abu Raja says that don't abuse Ali and his Ahlul Bayt. A neighbor of mine from Banu Hajim once came to Kufa. He said, have you not seen how Allah killed Fasiq ibn Fasiq, astaghfirullah, the transgressor, son of transgressor, meaning Imam Hussein ibn Ali. Narrator says that at that time, two lightning bolts came from the sky and hit both of his eyes, and he got blinded. Again, Wasiullah Abbas termed this hadith as authentic. So you can clearly see that how Allah is dealing with the people that have animosity and hatred against Imam Hussein and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam. And inshallah in future quotes we will see more about the way they are being dealt by Sunni scholarship. Over to you, Brother Hassan.
So let's have a quick look at the text of Qazi Abu Bakr ibn Arbi, not the Sufi, but this was the Umayyad. This is his book, a very famous and I would say very infamous book, Al-Wasim and Al-Qawasim. It actually dealt with disputes. It's been translated by Aisha Bewley in English as well. Although I have noticed that there's certain parts of the text that I'm about to read, we're taking this from the Arabic. You might not find it in Miss Bewley's in this way. I wonder why. Anyway, what Abu Bakr ibn Arabi says, Hussein failed. Hussein failed to take heed of the words of Ibn Abbas, who was the greatest scholar of that time. Nor did he listen to the teacher of the companions, Ibn Umar. He wanted to be young. When he was in fact old, people were not present around him. He did not have helpers to support his stance, nor did he have people that were willing to sacrifice their lives for him. Those who waged war against him did that only because they were doing ta'wil, interpretation, nor did they kill him except they had heard from his grandfather, the most merciful of all prophets, who foretold disputes and warned of fitna. And there are many narrations regarding this, like the Prophet said, after me there will be many calamities and much evil behavior. Whoever you see splitting away from the Jama'ah or trying to create division amongst the Ummah of Muhammad, then kill him. So the people waged war with Hussein only because of narrations like these. So this is from Awasim bin al-Qawasim, page 237, and pages 244 to 245. So the version, and it's interesting, very, very interesting. Look how he's trying to portray. He's portraying Imam Hussein alayhi salam as not knowledgeable about the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. An individual that was essentially an irrational individual who was an old man trying to relive his childhood. You know, like when you have that excitement, sorry, not childhood, adolescence, that exuberance, of a young man. So basically, he's trying to reconnect with his youth by doing something which contravened the Sunnah, because he's saying that the individuals such as Ibn Umar told him not to go, and they were more knowledgeable. Notice that he talks about Ibn Umar being as the teacher of the companions. So they advised him not to do so, and he went against what they were saying. And the crucial thing is, he then supports this. He goes, the killing, those that killed him, they had a rationale for doing so, because the Hadith literature, the Sunnah was that if someone breaks away from the Jama'ah, he should be put to death. So there you go. This tells you everything about Ibn Arabi, and it's interesting. You get in this day and age, I personally, and you know as well as I do, this is why people like Bewley interpreted this, translated this book. They call him Rahimullah. He's highly regarded, Ibn Arabi. And it's also interesting that Al-Manawi in Faiz al-Ghadeer, volume 5, page 246, he said this. And he's talking about Abu Bakr ibn Arabi here. He wrote a book about Imam Hussein, may Allah be pleased with him, and disgrace his opponents. He claimed that Yazid killed him justly by the sword of his grandfather. We seek refuge in the Lord with regards to this. So I know that, for example, Ibn Khaldun has also mentioned the same in Al-Muqaddamah as well. This is a comment that he said Imam Hussein was killed by the sword of his grandfather. Basically, the Sunnah killed him. So this in itself shows you the nasb of Ibn Arabi, and you get these individuals today. All these individuals on these channels, they regard Ibn Arabi as Rahimullah. And in fact, many of the defenses of the Sahaba that they present in these days, these risible defenses, are from this very book. And let me take this a little bit more forward. There's also a commentary of Mustafa Abu Mayati. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what he says. And I'm going to be quoting this from his commentary of Nawasim bin Qasim. So what he says, this is very, very interesting. Even though we love them for their honor, blood relation to the Prophet, we as historians can't help but write in abundance to what logic, justice, and truth led to it. Because narrations that we are assured of don't allow otherwise. And those aren't our views alone. We mention here two sayings, one of the great reformist Imam of the Ibn Taymiyyah, the second The historian Sheikh Al-Khudari. Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned the many advices that were given, pieces of advice that were given to Hussein he received against rebelling and warning of the consequences thereof. Then he says, the rebellion did not bring any good religious or worldly benefit, and his rebellion and murder brought corruption that wouldn't have happened if he'd stayed at home. His aim of bringing good and expelling evil had not been attained, but on the contrary, evil intensified with his rebellion and death. Goodness diminished because of it. It is because it became a cause of great evil, and the murder of Hussein was amongst the cemented evil. So then he says, look up the quotation in Minhaj al-Sunnah, pages 287 to 288. As for Al-Sheikh Al-Khudari, he commented on the incident of Hussein's murder, saying, generally Hussein committed a great error with his rebellion that brought to the Ummah the calamity of division and difference and shook the pillars of its familiarity to this day. All that happened is that the man saw something that he couldn't achieve and he didn't prepare for it. So what he hungered for was prevented, and Hussein opposed Yazid after the people swore allegiance to him. And he didn't show the oppression or abuse that makes rebellion good for the Ummah. So this is obviously his commentary of Awasim bin Qawasim, page 249. Now what can you say here? I mean, I'm actually lost for words. Normally I've always got something to comment on, but this really shocks you that, you know, this is the books in these people's hearts, that they actually do regard Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam as a rebel, as a Baghi, an individual that acted contrary to the Sunnah, who went against the advice of the companions, and essentially he brought it on himself. And it's the most interesting thing is what here, they go, if it's because of Imam Hussein alayhi salam that the consequence thereof is what affected the Ummah. All of the things that came, that flowed from it, are due to Imam Hussein alayhi salam's failure. Astaghfirullah. This is the sort of stuff that these individuals that say we love the family of the Prophet. Look at the writings of these individuals. Look at the writings of their scholars and the commentaries of their scholars. And you know, brother Zadi will know this. We come from the same part of the world. Many books which have been written against Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam in Urdu, like I can't remember the author, Khilafat Muawiyah or Yazid. They all rely heavily on these
there are a
books.
bunch of books that are written against, and even latest book came in from Kifayatullah Sanabuli, which is more than 900 pages. That's written on the topic of Yazid ibn Muawiyah, just to prove that he was a really good person. 900 pages only on Yazid. That's one thing. And then you have people writing like Rashid ibn Rashid, people writing Khilafat Muawiyah wa Yazid, Harad Dehlwi writing some of the stuff against Imam Hussein. So there were always a bunch of Nawasib that have explicitly wrote against Imams of Ahlulbayt, and that have explicitly write especially against Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. Let's see what Ashraf Ali Thanvi has written. So Ashraf Ali Thanvi, I would say the thing that he has quoted is really nasty. So what he said in his book Malfudat Hakim al-Ummat, it's in volume number 8, page number 65, and it's published by Idara Talifat Ashrafiyah. So it says that, I'll read Urdu so people that knows Urdu would understand. एक मर्तबा फरमाया कि हम एक दफ़ा बीमार हो गए, हमको मरने से बहुत डर लगता है। हमने ख्वाब में हज़रत फ़ातिमा रज़ी अल्लाहु अन्हा को देखा, उन्होंने हमको अपने सीने से चिमटा लिया, हम अच्छे हो गए. Right? So the translation, it goes as that I dreamt that I saw I saw Fatima radiallahu anha taking me to her bosom, right? Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. Thereafter, I became good. Now, I couldn't, wallahi ladhim, it was so difficult for me to read the translation for the viewers, honestly. But I'm just reading it so that our people would know that what sort of quotations we have and what sort of love you have when you're quoting these kind of things.
And also, you know, Sayyid Zadi, there's a point, isn't it? There's a hadith, you're more than familiar with this, that on the Day of Judgment, there'll be a point when everybody will be told to look down because Sayyidah Zahra Salamun Alayha is walking past. You know, that is the status of Sayyidah Zahra Salamun Alayha. And we have this individual, saying that, forget that, I'm having the same problem.
The thing is, he's called Hakim al-Ummat. Hakim al-Ummat is someone who is a doctor for the whole Ummah.
Yeah.
Right? So the next reference we have is from Sirate Mustaqim, which is a book by Shah Ismail. Shah Ismail is being respected by both Salafis and Deobandis likewise in a subcontinent, right? And he has a book called Sirate Mustaqim. It's published by Darul Kitab Deoband in India. And the reference is page number 314. It says that one of my elders saw in a dream that the great saint Hazrat Ali alayhi salatu wassalam and the leader of all women, Hazrat Fatima Zahra radiyallahu anha, as they say. Thus Hazrat Ali gave me a bath. Hazrat Ali, like Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam, gave a bath to my elder with his own blessed hands. And cleanses the body of my elder like a father cleanses the body of his son. And Hazrat Fatima Zahra dress him in fine clothes with her blessed hand. Let me read the Urdu code for you. The Urdu code goes as, और जनाब फातिमा ज़हरा रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हा ने निहायत उम्दा और कीमती लिबास अपने हाथ मुबारक से आपको पहनाया.
I swear to God, these people have no shame whatsoever. Let's just say now, this moment in time, if I was to say, I had a dream that, their mother placed my head on their chest, would they like that? And then here they're saying it about the blessed daughter of the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, who never even used to uncover a head if a blind man was in a room. These people have no shame. Hassan Bari, please carry on.
Absolutely, Sayyid, absolutely. I mean, like that, you've hit the nail on the head. They would,
let me quote what Ibn Uthaymeen has said, and inshallah we can be done through this part, and inshallah I would like Sayyid Hassan to comment on it. Ibn Uthaymeen, in his book, which is a commentary on Sahih al-Muslim, At-Ta'liqu ala Sahih al-Muslim, it's volume number 9, and it's published by Maktab al-Rushd, page number 78. Allahumma a'fu anha wa illa fa inna Aba Bakr radiyallahu anhu ma istanada ila ra'yi wa inna ma istanada ila nas. وكان عليها أن تقبل قول النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, as I'm saying, لا نؤرث ما تركنا صدقة ولكن عند المخاصمة لا يبقى للإنسان عقل. أستغفر الله. I cannot even read. Let me read the translation, right? Make it easy. Allahumma forgive her. So this Nasbi is asking for forgiveness for whom? Sayyidat Zahra salamullahi alayha. As Abu Bakr did not stand for an opinion but for a text, and she should have accepted the Prophet's statement, we do not leave inheritance, what we leave is sadaqah. But when in dispute, a human no longer has a mind to comprehend with what he is saying or doing or behaving. Astaghfirullah. Like she lost her mind when she, astaghfirullah, she lost her mind, astaghfirullah, when she got angry with Abu Bakr.
I am lost for words.
I wouldn't be harsh, but you accusing Sayyidah Zahra of losing her mind? Salamullah alayha. I mean, like, if I say this for Abu Bakr, that he lost his mind.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I really, it doesn't bother me a lot because they have the belief for Prophet. So what would you accept for Sayyidah Zahra?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. The elders said that on the Prophet's deathbed. So that it's not, much more different. But, it is shocking. It really, really is shocking that there's such an attack. It's almost, you're having an attack on her character. Like, how dare you behave in such a manner? And you, Sayyidah Zahra is the leader, the chief of women of paradise. And you're saying that may Allah forgive her. So you're in some way saying that she's committed some major sin that you're not even sure that, that there's forgiveness for her. You're asking for Allah's forgiveness for her. The worst thing is that she did not even accept. I mean, if we accept the Sunni perspective on Baghi Fadak, she didn't accept the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that in itself would suggest that her anger, had no justification, and he's asking forgiveness for her anger. But the actual crux of an issue, really, which he probably hasn't touched on in this text here, is that she was wrong, and her anger is based on the fact that she didn't like that decision. So what does that say? So what do we learn? We learn that there existed Sunni scholars who would avoid narrating hadith in praise of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. They'd adopt self-censorship so that this a particular hadith in praise of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, for example, wouldn't become public knowledge, as there was a fear that people would become Rawafid. That was one concern. Another method that they'd adopt would be to downplay a particular merit of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and a counter was a methodology that they'd use. And then thus wasn't just specific to Amir al-Mu'mineen. It extended to other members of the family of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, amongst his descendants, most notably Imam Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam, whom they deemed a rebel for his stance against Yazid. It's interesting that when you get those individuals that try to insist that, oh, it's all politics, everything was fine, it was just all this hatred, it shouldn't be seen in, it should be taken with a pinch of salt, it was just all politics. When you present such an argument that is contrary to the explicit teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who instructed the ummah to love members of his household, there is no exception. And individuals that who adopt such a methodology are in fact partners in crime. You guys are trying to legitimize and understand and support Nawasib mentality. And it is indeed unfortunate that in this day and age we still have individuals that do that. I think that concludes matters for this evening. I think this show has certainly opened up my eyes. There are many things that I wasn't aware of, and inshallah I hope our viewers will likewise benefit from this program. Please, as I always say, to the point of ad nauseum, please like, subscribe, follow the channel through whatever social media platforms that you follow. Remember us in your du'as, as we shall remember you. Assalamu alaikum.